Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. So today we have a topic that some people are well versed, some people are curious, other people are like, yeah, no. I don't, yeah. So whatever the case, wherever you fall in those categories, you're going to learn something today. So I'm very happy to have Sarah Wellband with me. Sarah Wellband is a remedial hypnotist. So we're going to be talking about
Hypnosis.
Yeah. And people are not everybody is aware of its benefits or how it's practiced, and not a lot of people are comfortable with going under hypnosis. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of education today. I mean, I know a few things, but I'd like to learn from you. So Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that the first thing to address is what you brought up is the going under. So a lot of people are aware of stage hypnosis, which is great entertainment, but people are put into a trance and then they do stupid things. The other end is hypnotherapy, which is a therapy that people use for all sorts of things, from anxiety, bad habits, smoking cessation, etc. But that also involves people being put into a trance, people going to sleep. It's not actually going to sleep, but not being able to use their conscious minds anymore. The difference with the remedial hypnotism is we don't use trance.
Okay.
So it's much more like a talking therapy. We use hypnotic techniques and we talk directly to the subconscious, but the client is awake, is aware of what's going on, can communicate, can take part in the whole process. So it's much more like a talking therapy than a one-way conversation.
Okay.
That's the big difference between hypnotherapy, which would be the closest thing, and remedial hypnotism.
So, Sarah, if the conscious mind is still aware of what is going on, isn't it creating a conflict? Because the conscious mind is part of the mechanism that, blocks the subconscious, for protection. So if the person is still conscious, doesn't that create a conflict on reaching the subconscious?
It could do, but it doesn't. What we do is we ask the subconscious to become dominant. Now, most of the time, the conscious mind is dominant and will take decisions, and you're not aware of the subconscious. With remedial hypnotism, we use what's called IMRs, which are idiomotor responses. And what I mean by that is we will ask the subconscious to move the fingers. And if I explain here, so I say to the subconscious, can you just move a finger, and a finger will move like that. And the client will go, what's happening? I didn't do that. My finger is moving independently of me. And that means the subconscious has become dominant, and the subconscious is quite capable of moving any part of the body. You walk, you're not consciously aware of walking. You're not consciously aware of doing most things, actually. Your subconscious just handles it for you.
So how do we know that it is not the conscious mind that is still in play? So is there a way of telling? Because I'm fascinated, because with the subconscious, usually the way the subconscious functions at its optimal is when the conscious mind is at rest or not active.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, is there a way that you can actually tell that it is the subconscious that is moving the finger and not the dominance nature of the conscious mind?
Simply because you say to the client, okay, did you consciously move that finger? And you can normally see by the look on their face, they're going, no, what's happening here? My body's moving and I'm not doing it. And it is, if somebody, again, if the finger moves very deliberately,
right,
I'll say, you're doing that, aren't you? And they go, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I said, no, I don't want you to do anything. Often people will close their eyes, or they might just let their conscious mind wander off, but they are still in the room.
right.
And the subconscious will move the fingers, and we get one finger for a yes and one finger for a no. Simple as that. There are other methods. Sometimes people's fingers won't move, and we can use other methods. We can, I don't use it myself, use conversational hypnosis, where we actually ask the subconscious to take over the voice box, take over the voice and talk directly. I'm not trained in that method, so I don't use it. I use the IMRs. But when you're talking to the subconscious, it can be very interesting. So you're saying to the subconscious, okay, you have this fear of public speaking, for example, and I've had the pre-talk with the client, and we figured out that it goes back to when they were in school. They stood up, they tried to give a presentation to their class, and they made a mess of it, and it was an awful experience.
Right.
So part of the subconscious stepped up and said, right, we're never doing that again. It was awful. I don't want to experience that again.
Right.
Then when you get into adulthood and your priorities change, you have to be able to give a presentation. It's part of your job. It's something you want to do. But that part of the subconscious is going, no. We don't want to do that. We giving presentations, standing up is a bad thing to do. So people have panic attacks, they have anxiety, they can even have nausea or physical symptoms that will stop them doing that thing that they need to do. So what I will do is say, okay, I need to speak to the part of the subconscious which developed that strategy for protecting that person when they were a child. And most of the stuff that I deal with originates in childhood. So that part of the subconscious, yep, okay, I'm here, I'll talk to you. And you basically just explain it as you would do to a child. You've been doing this job for all these years. We know why you started it. You've been doing a great job, but it's not appropriate now to do that anymore. You're actually holding this person's happiness back. We need to change this behavior. And because the subconscious mind is all about your happiness and your safety, those are the two areas of responsibility that it has. When you say, okay, this isn't making the person happy, this aversion to public speaking, I need you to change it. Can you change it? And you get a yes and go, okay, can you go ahead and now change that thought process? And it is instantaneous. So you then say to the person, now think about doing that presentation. How do you feel? And they go, those feelings of dread and that anxiety it's gone.
Yeah.
So that behavior has changed instantaneously because the subconscious is willing and able to communicate and willing and able to change behaviors once it knows that behavior is no longer helpful or required.
Yeah. So most trauma are, like you rightfully stated, childhood based, right? And the protection that the subconscious and then the conscious mind supporting that decision and being the dominating factor to sense the threat is all a protection, right? And most people do not go that direction because of the rawness of the emotion. It is almost like putting them back into the space where that first happened, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
That's not necessary. I don't agree with this whole idea of revisiting trauma because the trauma's there. They don't have to revisit it. It's with them all the time. And the way that I describe trauma, okay, so if something happens to you, it doesn't necessarily need to be as a child. It could be a car accident or something traumatic happens. It doesn't have to be a big thing either. If it was traumatic for you, then it's trauma. So if you can explain what happened, if you can find a logical reason, let's say a car accident, the other driver was drunk or the road was icy or they were on their phone or whatever, that was the cause of the accident, or you were doing some of those things, then it's not going to be traumatic because there is a cause and an effect. And you know what those two things are. But sometimes things happen that are so random that we can't find a cause. Or in the situation with childhood abuse, for example, the person involved will not explain themselves. You can't find a reason. So again, what happens is a part of the subconscious is takes on the job or is assigned the job of figuring out what happened for the express reason of stopping it happening again in the future. Okay. So this thing happened. I need to find out. And to do that, they have to keep on going over the incident, keep on going over the events. What happened? Why did it happen? Could we have done something different? Were we responsible? All these questions. And that's why people get flashbacks, why people have nightmares, why people have intrusive thoughts, because the subconscious is trying and trying and trying. If we can figure out what happened, we can prevent it.
Yeah.
Now, with childhood abuse, just the thing of being an adult means it isn't going to happen again. But again, the subconscious doesn't know that. The subconscious goes, there could be a threat there. And until we can quantify that threat, we need to be on high alert. So again, what we do is we find the part of the subconscious which is doing its damnedest, doing its best to try and find an answer and say, look, there's never going to be an answer. And all you're doing by constantly revisiting and going over this again and again is doing harm to the conscious, doing harm to the person. So you need to stop. The analogy that we give is that if I were to give you a jigsaw puzzle and it was to contain all the answers to these questions, but there are pieces missing. There are pieces that have been lost over the years. There are pieces that have got paint on them. You're never, ever going to complete this jigsaw. Then why would you try? And again, the subconscious is very childlike, not childish, childlike. If you can say to the subconscious, there's no reason to do this, there's no purpose, and you're actively harming the person by doing it, it'll go, okay, I'll stop. And I worked with a woman who'd suffered trauma very much as an adult, 3 very traumatic events, all unrelated, but all in a very short period of time. And after we'd worked together, she said, it's like they're covered in oil. I can reach for them. I can remember them. They haven't disappeared. But when I try to grasp them, they just slip out of my hand. They can't hurt me anymore. So that was a really good example of the subconscious had changed, again, the thought process, the thought pattern, so that it wasn't relevant anymore.
So are there certain things that in your practice you recommend actually visiting that event to either better understand or better come to terms with, or you don't encourage that at all?
Again, as I said, that trauma,
Yeah,
or PTSD or CPTSD, it's with them all the time. That's why they're seeking therapy. So there is absolutely no value and no purpose to force somebody to go back and explain what happens. I've had situations where a client said to me, I cannot tell you what happened. I can't put it into words. I know what happened. It's there. It's in my head all the time, but I don't want to tell you. And I just, again, talk to the subconscious. And afterwards, they've been able to tell me, because there's no emotional connection anymore. We've split the emotion from the logic. So I don't see any value in getting somebody to tell me a story that they don't want to tell me.
right. That makes sense. Healing is not an easy journey. Trauma is not something fun to experience. And most people, myself included, find the healing journey to be one that is challenging because of the need to revisit things and discuss things and, face things head on.
Yeah.
It's painful, it's uncomfortable. That is the path that my healing took. However, the other side of things, healing is lifelong. Again, it's not just, a place and time and that's it. It gives you those methodologies to better manage yourself, to understand that, okay, this thing is coming or this feeling is coming, but I don't have to have it dominate. So to hear about having to let these conscious mind, kind of like take a rest, while the subconscious acknowledges what happened without having to go through the trauma is quite impressive. actually.
Yeah, I mean, if we could deal with all problems just using our logic and our conscious and our rational minds, we wouldn't really have any problems. We would say, no, it's ridiculous to smoke. We should only eat a certain amount of food. We should do all these things because they're rational, because they're logical. But we're not. We're only a tiny part of rational and logical. We're mainly emotion.
Yeah.
And imagination. And the way that we describe it, the best way I can describe it to your listeners is that if you imagine your mind is like a ship and you've got a captain on the ship, which is your conscious mind, your logical, rational mind. And the captain knows where you want to go, what you want to achieve when you get there, the basic premise of your life. But there's only one captain. And as you know, you can only do 3 or 4 things at one time before you have to shift your focus. Yeah. So your conscious is very deep, very narrow. So you can think about abstract ideas. You can write a thesis, but you can't write a thesis, paint a wall, and cook a meal all at the same time. Can't be done. The crew of the ship is your subconscious. Yeah. Now, your subconscious doesn't have the ability to rationalize, to think deeply, to problem solve. But it does cover all your emotions, your imagination, your memories, your creativity, basically anything that you are not thinking about consciously at any particular time. Your subconscious is taking charge of that.
Right.
And that's why we circumvent the captain and go straight to the crew, because the crew is where the issues are.
Right.
So the captain is standing on the sidelines. And again, the captain wants you to be happy, wants you to be functioning well. So why wouldn't the captain let the crew just take over and say, okay, this is what we need to do? Another analogy that I use, a colleague of mine introduced me to, is if you imagine the difference between hypnotherapy and remedial hypnotism. So if you imagine a nightclub, disco, and the subconscious are all inside this nightclub and they're all bopping around, having a good time, dancing, etc. The bouncer on the door is the barrier between the conscious and the subconscious. So a hypnotherapist will put the bouncer to sleep by using a trance and go into the nightclub and try and find the part of the subconscious that is smoking or drinking too much or anxiety or PTSD or whatever, and deal with it in situ. With what I do, we actually ask that part of the subconscious to come out of the nightclub, to come around the back of the conscious mind and just come out and talk to us directly. So from a practical point of view, if we hit any barriers, I can say to the subconscious, can you put into the person's conscious mind what you want to talk about? Because often we will be doing a session and it could be overeating, it could be anything. And I say to the subconscious at the end, is there any other part of the subconscious that would like to talk to me? And all of a sudden a stray finger comes up. I haven't got a clue what this is about, but there's obviously something that the subconscious would like to communicate. So I say to that part of the subconscious, can you put into the person's mind what it is you want to talk about? And I had this the other week with a lady, and she said, my brother, I've got a big problem with my brother. We're fighting all the time. She said, I hadn't even thought about it, but that thought had just popped into my head. So it's really, practical, I suppose, is a word that we can, if that had happened during hypnotherapy when somebody's in a trance, you'd have to bring them out of the trance, put them back into a trance. It's much more time consuming.
Right.
Whereas if we can work with both the conscious and the subconscious at the same time, we can get a lot more done in the same period of time.
So, in the instance you mentioned about the lady, that the one thing that popped out was her issue with her brother, right? The problem she was having with her brother. So that is kind of like a straightforward answer, right?
Yeah.
In a case where the multiple things, again, we're complex beings, right? There's so many things that sometimes layer, like the lady you talked about that had, a sequence of things happen in a short time frame, all related. So how do we dissect different things. So if the subconscious has had trauma over years or over a lifetime that has brought on like different barriers or bouncers, in this case, to actually having a person live a life of fulfillment. So how do we,
Okay, so again, when we're talking to the crew, we will generally talk to one part of the crew. So each part of the crew has a particular role, a particular job. So something traumatic happens, a part of the crew is assigned to deal with that part of that trauma. If there are numerous things, what we can do is address the crew as a whole, and effectively we get one crew member to become a spokesperson for the rest of the crew. Because again, it sounds like we're putting everybody into different parts, but we're not. We're talking to the person. We're talking to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is all interconnected. So we can say, okay, these traumatic events have happened throughout your life. None of them were your fault. That's really, really important, because especially with children are very egocentric. The world revolves about them, both good and bad. If something bad happens, then children will automatically say, well, I did something, I was bad. These things happened to me because of who I am, which couldn't be further from the truth. But that's the belief that they will develop. So if we've got multiple traumas, we can say that these things happen, but they weren't your fault. They weren't to do with you. We've got to change that pattern of thought. And once we get that acceptance, that the subconscious will accept, okay, I was 6 years old. I couldn't have caused this. Mum and dad were fighting. Must have been my fault. You get the adult to look at that and go, is that really what happened? Because again, when you have things that happen in childhood, you tend to look at them through the eyes of the child. You don't look at them and say, okay, I'm an adult now. I've got a 6-year-old. Could she split my marriage up? No. Therefore, that 6-year-old can't be blamed for what happened to her parents. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So getting somebody to look at the problem of a child through the eyes of an adult is a really important thing to do. And then again, you take that part of the subconscious, which is still operating on that childlike premise, and say, that's not correct. 1, it's not correct, and 2, it's not helpful.
Yeah.
The main thing is the subconscious is there to keep you safe and to keep you happy. In fact, it's the other way around, to keep you happy and to keep you safe. People do a lot of things that aren't safe. They ride horses. They jump out of planes with little bags on their backs. They go skiing off piste. They do lots of things which are not safe, but it makes them very happy. So that's why the subconscious will override the safety aspect and go, "Ooh, this is great." On the other end of the scale, if the subconscious cannot foresee any possibility of future happiness, then they will take the foot off the safety brake, which is why people, unfortunately, are able to end their lives, because the subconscious goes, there's no chance of happiness in the future. They wrongly believe that.
Yeah.
Therefore, yeah. So the happiness is the first thing. Again, childlike. What do children want? They want to be happy. That's their whole reason for being is to be happy. And that's why we try to get back to.
Right. We are complex beings, and it's always a great reminder that our body, our nervous system, our beings, our minds is really set up for our own safety. Mm-hmm. And we have those, it's kind of like a breaker, a circuit breaker, like certain things that have that nervous system trip, yeah. Right? So, yeah. I used to joke about, there was a point in my life that I went to acupuncture very regularly. And I used to joke that I'm going to have my wires, reconnected.
Well, did the acupuncture work?
It did.
Great. Yeah, I mean, there's a great deal to be said for if things work, then that's all that matters.
It absolutely did at the time. And it's something that I do now periodically, when I just feel like I just need those frayed wires kind of like calm in a sense.
Yeah.
Because things do happen, life happens.
Yeah.
And the subconscious work is something that I have worked on the surface. And, my question about having multiple things be a reason why maybe certain things are not done or certain things are being kind of displaced, because again, sometimes it may be just that one thing that tripped that breaker so badly that everything shut down. Then it could be like a compounding of different things that, maybe the refrigerator shut down because it was drawing so much energy, maybe the TV, and, finally the breaker is about to shut down, and it was all this overload of the system,
Yeah.
right? So which one do we address first? It's like a spool of or a thread or
Yeah.
wool,
Yeah.
right? How do we untangle this, right?
The thing that I would say is a bit like dominoes. If you've got a row of dominoes and you hit one, all the others will fall into place.
Mm.
And again, one thing, I don't argue with you, but you said a couple of times that humans are very complex. I actually disagree with that. I think we are
Simple.
pretty simple.
And we complicate things.
Yeah, and a lot of it is down to the mental health industry. We are bombarded with things. You've got to have this book. You've got to have this antidepressant. You've got to have this. You've got to have, because you're so complicated, and you're such a mess. And we're going to fix you, but it'll cost a fortune. Whereas you look at a 4 or 5 year old child.
Yeah.
They just want to be happy, and as you get older, you have more things that get in the way of that happiness, and more things you have to consider. But I think we're pretty simple beings. And when I do this therapy, the last session I always do, I teach people how to do the therapy themselves, how to work on themselves, and how to talk to their own subconscious. Because I don't want people running back to me and going, I need to fix this. I want them to be able to go away and go, okay, I can talk to my own mind. I can talk to my own crew. I'm not frightened of myself. I understand myself. I understand my emotions. I understand why I think this way.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. That is so empowering to be able to do that.
It is, but not a lot of people are comfortable with the void.
Yeah, but it's imagine if you knew yourself so well that you could go, okay, well, I've got this problem. I had an MRI back in the summer, and I don't like enclosed spaces. The whole idea of it was freaking me out. Now, before I learned how to do this therapy and I work on myself, I'd have had to have a sedative, probably a general anesthetic actually. But I was certainly wanted something to, and I just went in there and I went off to my perfect place. Yeah. Which is a place in my own imagination where I'm safe, I'm calm, I'm well, nothing can hurt me. I was in that bloody machine for about 30 minutes and, I came out and my blood pressure was completely normal. And so that it's not just a woo thing. There are loads of practical things you can use it for.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Sarah, question for you. Yes, you do teach people how to utilize this methodology to help, with managing whatever it is that is going on with them in the moment or impending. Do you recommend that, somebody who hasn't done this before do it, or at least have it with oversight? Because again, not everybody's comfortable. I'm speaking from a place of experience. I wasn't comfortable with, just being with me and my mind and everything else to kind of dissect things until I started practicing it. And yes, that's my favorite place to go, inside what's going on, right? However, for people that are not comfortable with it, do you think that they at least need a bit of hand holding, maybe in the beginning, and then they learn these methodologies to use, say, in everyday life?
Yeah. So the way I work, I always start with an initial consultation, which is completely free of charge, no obligation. People don't need to proceed, but that gives me the opportunity to make sure that the issue that they want to deal with is within my capabilities, that we get on with each other, and that their subconscious is willing and able to talk, to communicate. Because about 10% of people, no matter what you do, their subconscious just will not communicate.
I was going to ask that next, but you're going into
so that's why I do the free consultation, because it wouldn't be ethical to charge people money if I know and they know that it's not going to work. So we set ourselves up for success. We then have 3 sessions. So the first session is normally where the major change happens, and the second and third sessions are just sort of consolidating and maybe refining and maybe dealing with other things. So by that third session, the person has had a major life change. They've seen that it's worked. There's a week normally between each session. So they've had 2 weeks of, oh my God, I'm not craving chocolate anymore. I had a lady who'd actually had a gastric sleeve. She'd had a major operation, yet she was still eating chocolate. She was hiding it around the house and not an addiction, because it's not addictive, but she believed she was addicted. We had 1 session, and that was back in September of last year. And she wrote to me over Christmas, I've had no chocolate. I don't like chocolate. I don't care about chocolate. I don't even think about chocolate. And this lady was in her 40s, so it had been many, many years. Anyway, I digress. So by the time we get to the third session, they know how to do the pink finger movements. They've seen it happen. They've seen the questions that I've asked, because they're awake, they're listening. So I will talk them through. Okay, now I want you to talk to your subconscious, and just do it in your own head. So you don't have to do it out loud. And you can see the fingers moving, and you go, okay, just deal with something small. Maybe you've got an annoying habit you want to stop, or just something little. And I just walk them through the process. And at the end of it, again, it's a conversation they're having with themselves. They can't hurt themselves. Their subconscious always wants them to be happy and safe. So they can always come back to me, obviously, if there's a big issue or if there's something they need some help with, and I'm very, very happy to do that. But I want them to be empowered, that they can help themselves. Again, society is, my little rant, always saying, you've got to have somebody else, you've got to have an expert, you've got to have this, you've got to pay. If people can work themselves out, if this stuff was taught in schools, imagine how much the whole world would save on mental health provision.
But we know that's not profitable.
Exactly. Therein lies the problem, but I can do my little bit.
I absolutely appreciate what you're doing, and for you to practice ethically, that is very commendable, because in a space like this where people are dealing with something so hidden from everybody else except them, there is that need to have that trusting relationship. There's that need to know that, okay, you are doing this genuinely because you can help me, not because, you're just trying to get on, right?
Yeah.
So as a teacher, I always appreciate hand holding a little bit. You don't have to overdo it. Hand holding in the beginning until you are comfortable, or until you have the tools to do whatever. And I trust you. Again, as a teacher, I trust you to do what you have to do, to be successful. So let's talk about the addiction part of things, because it came up a little bit with the chocolate. If somebody has addiction and it's something that is familial in nature, right? Because addiction shows up in different ways. It's not always illicit substances. It can be behavioral, or it could be obsession over whatever. It could be pornography, alcohol, whatever it is, right? It is never like the one thing just because, there's a history of this in the family. That means that is your addiction. People try to maneuver, but they have other things that becomes their vices. So how can a person work through that if they come to you like, okay, so I do have an addictive personality, or I have, a history of addiction in my family. However, I am trying to break free of, being obsessive, engaging obsessive behavior over one thing or whatever it is. And I want to break that cycle because it's affecting me, it's affecting my relationship, it's affecting my productivity as a human being. So in that case, with that knowledge that somebody's come to you with, a healthy family history, how is that process like?
We always go to the root.
Okay.
What's the origin? Because things like even hard drugs and alcohol and things that are very dangerous for us, that's not the addiction, that's what we're using to deal with our problems. So what you've got to do is find the problem, find the root cause. And the subconscious knows what that is. Even if you're floundering around and I don't know why this is, I can tell you the subconscious knows. The subconscious knows that, okay, let's take something that is not particularly emotional. Food is a big one. And I've done quite a lot of work with weight control over the last year. When you're little and you're unhappy or you're bored or you're fed up or you're crying your eyes out, you're in a tide of emotion.
Yeah.
What do you normally get given by mum or dad to make you feel better?
A cookie, something sweet, food.
Exactly. And that doesn't have to happen very often for the subconscious to go, oh, okay, when we're feeling bad, we're feeling unhappy, something sweet always makes us feel better. Guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. We've lost our toys, something's happened, that piece of chocolate, that piece of cake, that cookie, that makes the world right. And when you're little, that's true. It's perfectly true, perfectly good strategy. Two things. One, there's somebody else in charge of the cookies. So you get one cookie and that's it. When you're an adult, however, one, you're in charge of buying the cookies and having them in the house so you can have as many as you like. But more importantly, you can't deal with adult problems with a child's solution. And what happens is people go, I'm unhappy, life's getting me down. And the subconscious, that part of the subconscious, go, have a cookie. Yeah. Always worked when we were a kid. And then what happens is 5 minutes later, you've got two problems. You've got the original problem you started with, and you've got your unhappiness that you've just eaten a whole packet of biscuits. Not one, whole packet. So again, that part of the subconscious is doing its best. It's saying, this is what made us happy back then. So let's do that. Let's do whatever we can to try and make us happy. When you first got drunk and you had such a laugh, you were rolling around, you had a great time with your friends and you felt amazing. Again, a bit of the subconscious will hang on to that and go, wow, that was amazing feeling, that first drug, that first joint, whatever it is. You're trying to recreate that, not by trying to harm you, because you just want to grab that little moment again. We're not that complex. We're pretty simple creatures. We will try and, I want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
So back to the original problem, the root cause or the root solution that worked then is not working now. I've had a couple of people, by coincidence, 2 people recently with Coca-Cola or Diet Coke addictions, like 6, 8, 10 cans a day. And both of them stopped within a couple of weeks.
Wow. So this is impressive. And I like your approach of not making the trauma worse, rather than like, let's address the root cause, let's address the emotions behind the behavior. So that is very helpful. So given geographical differences, so somebody's listening to us today and they really do want to work on that aspect of life that is affecting them, whether it's public speaking, whether it is the boldness to pursue a passion, whether it is obsession over anything, substance, food, etc. If they want to work with you, what is that process like?
So the best way to get hold of me is through the website, which is outofchaostherapy.com. I live in a village called Chaos. So outofchaostherapy.com, or you can look me up on social media. I'm all over the place and get in contact with me. You're on the east coast of the States, so the time difference isn't too bad. I've worked a couple of times with people in California, but it's sort of the start of their day and the end of mine. But with you guys, I think it's about a 5 or 6 hour difference, so we can work together.
Yeah.
So that's
Beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful, yes.
But as I say, the main thing is that I always start with that free consultation, and it's not 10 minutes, it's a full hour session, because it's important, you know, that we have a relationship, that we have a rapport, that we're comfortable working together. So that's really important to do that.
It is. It's absolutely important, because you have to trust me to help you, and I have to trust you that you can help me. So that relationship is very, very important. So for everybody who's listening, there is help. Even if you're in despair, there are people that are generally out doing good and they're willing to help. So a free consultation does not hurt. It is free. FREE, free, right? So reach out, right? Not everybody's for everybody. Yes. Not, you know, you will get to know if Sarah can work with you, if you feel comfortable working with Sarah, and, you know, just have that consultation. It doesn't hurt. If you may have this consultation and it doesn't, maybe it would direct you in the direction you need to go. Who knows, right? But
one thing I would say is that if you're at the end of the consultation, people, we decide together it's not right for them, they will know more about themselves at the end of the hour than they did at the start. So.
I would bet an hour is a long time. You know, an hour is a long time to dissect things. Again, you know, I like that analogy of a spool. You are unwinding that thread. You may not get to the middle of it, but you'll be, you know, halfway in, and you'll understand, you know, what is going on and how to go about addressing it. So please, you heard Sarah, all the information about how to reach our website, email, everything, socials will be in the show notes. So reach out, follow, you know, maybe research her methodology or look at what she's done in socials and see if this is somebody that you may want to work with or reach out to. So we are human beings, not as complex as we may think. We just want to be happy. That's
exactly. That's what it comes down to.
We just want to be happy. So yeah, it's not as hard. You know, we complicate things, and I learned today, we complicate things. So please reach out, see what, you know, can come of it. So Sarah, I thank you. I'm grateful you made it here.
Really talking to you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Here. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for listening. Please let us know what you think. If this is something new to you, you learned something, we'd like to know that. If this is something that maybe you were looking to explore but did not want to go under trance, and, you know, this is a new way of getting to that healing phase, let us know that, because I learned something today. I thought all of it was kind of the same, but now I learned something today. So again, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. And yes, Sarah has horses. Say hi to the horses.
Which need feeding, I'm afraid.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.